Action.
What it do?
Yeah.
This is where we enter the theme music.
We had something before too, but I forget it now.
And it's too bad because for this topic, there really should be some music, considering, you know, what we have. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mack Flash 5, the show where we like to get together and list our top 5 movies fitting a certain topic or subject or genre. My name is Matthew, and with me is AB, Scott, and Mack Flash Mike Jr., apparently. He's demoted himself or spawned himself. This is the clone of the original Mack Flash.
It's along with the topic.
I know for a fact that your dad is not named Mack Flash Mike.
Well, yes, it actually should say Esquire, but I didn't want anyone to feel bad.
Okay. Yeah, so normally our topics are usually picked by one of us. We go in turn. Mike will pick one, I'll pick one, AB will pick one, Scott will pick one. Today was kind of like pull a topic out of a hat kind of a thing. So, and is kind of a bit more vague. So our top 5, like the title card showed, our top 5, this episode will be our top I'm saying top 5 a lot. Our top 5 animated movies.
How many are there going to be? How many are there?
It's our top 50 because I said it 10 times.
I am not prepared.
Animated movies. We decided
Andrew
AB was going to start with his number 3.
Okay, well, first of all, I got to change my background here. All right. There we go. Okay,
that looks real. That's animated?
It is very animated. That's what makes it one of the things that makes it great. Okay, so I am going to talk about my number 3. My number 3 is a very influential animated movie. It's from 1995, and the director is Mamoru Oshii, and that is Ghost in the Shell. We'll pop that up there. Ghost in the Shell is one of the very first animated movies I watched.
As a child, as a 4-year-old?
No, I was 95, so I was not a 4-year-old in 1995, unfortunately. No, I watched it probably in college, and I loved it right away because it deals with a lot of the things that I love. It's very, very influenced by a movie that we've talked about on here a lot, which is Blade Runner. Has the ideas. It takes the ideas from Blade Runner and then takes them a step further. So the ideas that are brought up in Blade Runner of can an AI think, love, feel emotion, basically, can it be human? And so this one takes it a step further and goes the opposite. If you take yourself as your person, who you are, and download it into a cybernetic body, and is that still you? And then it gets into other stuff where when you get hacked and like kind of computer viruses and that kind of idea, and it's a very interesting concept, and there's a lot of philosophical things that the movie deals with, and then there's a show as well. What I would recommend if people want to get into this and watch this is this is one of the few things where I will say this, where you watch the show first and then the movie. The movie is kind of confusing, which is what I like. I like to watch it and kind of dissect it, but the show really fleshes it out over the series. And then you can go back and watch the movie and you really understand what's going on and really enjoy the movie. I think after I watched the series, I went back and watched the movie again and loved it even more because they really fleshed out the characters, especially the main character and the Major. Yeah, I love it. I love the ideas.
Did you say when the series? When did the series come out?
The series would have been after that, so I don't want to say like
2000s. Oh, still in the 90s. Okay, late
90s,
like Matrix kind of time, sort of.
So here's the thing. I was just going to bring that. I said it's a very influential thing. The Wachowskis have said that Ghost in the Shell was like the major influence on the
So
Matrix.
it's funny you said I've never seen it, but the only thing of its history I know is that it's very Blade Runner and very Matrix.
Yeah.
And and I know the bits of it, but like that's what I always grew up knowing when people talked about Ghost in the Shell. I'm like, oh, it's that Blade Runner Matrix mashup that came before Matrix. But yes, I hear you. That's definitely
yeah, for sure. And obviously it continues to influence stuff. You had that show on Netflix, which unfortunately just got canceled, Altered Carbon, which is basically like identical, like the whole thing of like like putting your little thing into somebody else's body and downloading yourself into that person's body.
That's why it sounded familiar. I was like,
it's like when I started watching Altered Carbon, I'm like, this is Ghost in the Shell, but like the live action Ghost in the Shell that's actually good.
Yeah. Altered Carbon's great.
Yeah. Well, R.I.P.
Well, it still is. It still exists.
Yeah, true. Anyway, that's my number 3, Ghost in the Shell.
Now to inflect an emotion, one word, or maybe sound to describe the live action ScarJo version.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Boom!
Whitewash.
You know what? People bag on it, and people bag on the fact that it's whitewashed or whatever. They brought her into it. I kind of like what they did with it. It is 100% whitewashed, but they kind of deal with that within the context of the movie. And the movie itself is not 100% terrible. It was actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be awful, like completely like a write-off, like most of them are. But it wasn't terrible. It just
the only unfortunate thing about Ghost in the Shell, I really bought into the whitewashing. I was like, A, that sucks. B, she had just done Lucy like a year before, and then this movie comes out, and I'm like, oh man. So like I had zero interest. It came and went, and like I have never thought about that movie since like it left theaters. But like I did not want to see it for those 2 reasons.
Yeah. If you don't know, like if you haven't watched the original, don't start with the live action one.
Sure. Right. I was going to say a companion piece to it.
But does it stand on its own? If you had no interest in anything else, could someone enjoy that version? I don't know.
Yes. It's self-contained. Like you don't have to watch the original. I just don't think it's better than the original.
No, well, we're here to talk about the good film, the animated one.
Yeah, the animated one is like groundbreaking. The animation is like on another level.
And it should be said, this is best animated films in our opinions, not best animated films to show your children. I should just say that.
Yeah,
100%. They're out of the 4 that I'm going to talk. Well, 2 are honorable mentions, but 3 of them are 100%. Do not these are not kids' films.
Right. I was actually really excited to hear all these lists because I knew at least some of them weren't going to be family friendly films.
This one is
Mine are all
not.
Yours are okay. So let's hear Scott's number 3 then.
Felix the cat. Oh no,
Fritz the cat.
Oh, Fritz. Yeah. That's a different cat.
Super mainstream with my number 3. My number 3 was in a war. My 3 and 4 were flipping back and forth. And ultimately what we do on the show, we talk about our top 3, and then we just honorable mention our 4 and 5. And I thought, I'm like, okay, which movie do I want to talk about the most? And again, I rewatched it recently, probably about a week ago. And for me, my number 3 is 2016's Moana. So we talked about this before, and I had it in my 4 spot, but I moved it up to my 3, mainly on the strength of a lot of the decisions that I admire that Disney took with that movie. And it was a monster hit. It was an incredible story, and what I really like that they did, and I see it, and every time I really applaud, is that if Moana came out in the 90s, she and Maui would have had a love romance, and Maui would have been a hunky, handsome, like king. But that's not the story, and that's not the story that we're getting for like the woke times about representation, which I eat up. You'll see in my list later. What I like about Moana is it's her story to be accepted in her tribe and to be accepted on the equal level as the demigod Maui. And as she goes through it, it's very fun, and it's Disney in this. And there's a great eclectic bunch of characters. But mainly it's about her earning respect from her people for being a young girl and for being a warrior, a fighter in her own culture. And with it being the Hawaiian and Samoan storytelling with incredible songs throughout done by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's my guy from Hamilton. And again, the voice work as well, too. And you do get Dwayne Johnson as Maui, who steals the entire film. I give that my number 3. And like I said, I saw that movie twice in theaters, once again, and then once again recently on Disney Plus. I put it on in the background. And it's the one that I like a lot every other time. It won't really beat my 2 or 3, but every time I see it, it's not like I like it a little bit more. I like it a lot more every time. And I already do like it. And like I said, just for everything else. And I like that they were more mindful of like the climate and telling a really good story and not compromising that story to fit their old Disney cliches in. And like, again, like I said at the end, Maui is like this overweight, kind of middle-aged, past his prime demigod. And Moana earns his respect at the end, and it's not a romance, and it's so refreshing to see that in a Disney movie, because you go back and a lot of those romances are ham-fisted and just kind of there for the sake of being there, and you get the popcorn and the cotton candy, but I think Moana at its core is one of the greatest stories that Disney has put out.
I think we talked about this, you and I, Scott, before, about that. I think it felt like one of the first, this is why I love it, one of the first Disney films where they seem to go to the culture that they're trying to represent and get input from them and represent it accurately. And when you hear the songs, you can tell that in the sort of these big choirs of people and things that are singing. And so you watch it and you go, okay, they're not appropriating culture, they're actually celebrating the culture, right? And you can see it when you watch it, and you can hear it in the music, especially if you get like the longer soundtracks. That's one of the ones I'm not a huge Disney sing-along type movie kind of guy, but that's one of those ones, that and like Frozen, that I like having the full album with my daughter, and we'll sing along and listen to the ones that's just the instrumentals, and you hear, that one's a great one for those songs for sure.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it, as far as not appropriating, but like including the culture. Right. And that's exactly what you see in it, and you're like, this is unbelievable, because like I said, they did it with Princess and the Frog, and I just think it kind of
missed the mark.
It got there, but again, you take like your black lead and you turn them into an animal, and then it's like the tropes. Oh, they're a talking animal, and there's the love story put in, but this one has none of that. The fact that they're Samoan is nothing aside from like the history and the magnitude of the situation of being such. So no, for that, my number 3, Moana.
Nice.
And to include on top of the celebrating the Pacific Island culture and stuff, my favorite song in that movie is "We Know the Way," which half the lyrics are in a Polynesian language, and then the other half are in English. And it's such a short song. I get so disappointed that it ends suddenly. Because I was like, no, I want another verse and chorus and bridge. Come on. I love, that's my, if we ever do like top songs, Disney.
Sure, you could,
sure. Oh my God, it's a good one. I'm a bubblegum homer. I go, you're welcome. You give me Dwayne Johnson. I'm like, you're welcome. I was this the whole time, so I'm a homer.
Yeah. Again, going into the culture, I like that they interweave the mythology, right? The Samoan mythology as part of the story, right? Obviously, he's the volcano and the demigod and all that stuff. So it's not just about the cultures, but it's about their history and about their myths, and it's all incorporated in the story. And
the genius behind the way they told his story on his tattoos.
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
And it's a character.
Amazing. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
Looks
so
cool.
That was like, okay, this is new. This is new Disney. Give me, I like it. Like, so nice. For sure. All right.
Okay. That was great.
Let's get out of the Disney world.
All right. That's fine by me. Mack Flash Mike Jr.
What do
you have for number 3?
I put Junior on mine because I did go the route of kids animated films, because they are some of my favorites. There's nothing wrong with other ones, and if this list were longer, I would have things like Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff, which I know it's still kind of kids, but I would adult it up a bit, But I went actually outside the country and chose a foreign film here for my number 3. Most people would think, wait, yours aren't all Pixar movies? What's going on, Mike? But no, I went with number 3 from France, The Little Prince. I absolutely adore this movie, and it's funny because I'll put it away. I won't watch it for a while, and I'll sort of forget, and then I'll when I put it on, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Like everything about this, the style they use, it's sort of a mixed media kind of style. So I've got one photo just to show it here, but The way they do it is there's sort of your basic animation, which you can kind of see in that first photo. And then anytime you see the prince's story, it's sort of this like paper, sort of crumpled paper kind of feel, like almost origami-ish kind of thing. And I just love the way they do it, because if you don't know The Little Prince, it's a book. It's a very famous French book. And I think what I love about this movie that most people who probably love the book don't love is this is not the story of The Little Prince. Like, it's not like they took the book and retold it. They came up with this other story, which is about this little girl and this aviator. And basically her mom is trying to raise her sort of to, follow the way everything is done. They all live in these conforming houses, and you got to go to work, and you're basically miserable your whole life and follow rules and do all these things. And he is sort of the complete opposite of that. And that's the parallel throughout the film. And he's telling her all about The Little Prince. And that Little Prince story is what comes from the book. So I just love the way the director, Mark Osborne, mixed the two. And what I do love throughout it also is there's lots of little cameo appearances, like Ricky Gervais does a voice. And you get all these people, you're like, oh, who is that? I know that. And they're not normal voice over people. So it's just a really cool story, and a story within a story. And it's all about love and loss. And I just think it's really well done. So that's my number 3, Little Prince.
Yeah, you're right. It is exceptionally beautiful. The animation is wild. I love it. Love that part.
And that's one that I couldn't believe I sort of missed when it first came out, and saw it on sort of a cheap re-release in a theater. And once I saw it, I fell in love, and I just like it.
I think you told me about it, and I went and got the Blu-ray.
Yeah,
and,
well worth watching.
Loved it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to give it a spin. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I
haven't seen it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, for my list, I picked 3 movies, and I was like, I don't know which way to order them. I do have a number 1 that was kind of obvious to me, but it's like, so how do I do the other 2? And I decided to just go chronological.
Sure.
So my number 3 is the 1978 film by Ralph Bakshi, his version of The Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
AB talked about it, or mentioned it quickly in his kids movies that wouldn't fly.
Yeah,
and it certainly fits in that list as an honorable mention.
Yeah.
And
good. I'm glad we could actually talk about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
Honorable mention.
But I really like this movie. The first time I saw it, it must have been on TV. I think maybe Return of the King, the Peter Jackson Return of the King was about to come out. Yeah. So they put this on air somewhere, because we got to let's Lord of the Rings is on the brain of everybody, so let's give them this to watch as well. And I really liked it. It's at least 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And it tells the story of the first 2 books. And for anyone who who likes the Peter Jackson movies, but needs just a Cliff Notes version of them, put this in, because it's the first 2 movies told, not exactly quickly, but you get a lot of the great, bits and details and an overall story. It's also a sequel or companion to the old TV movie of The Hobbit.
Yes.
And then Rankin and Bass did their version of Return of the King, and I have not seen that one yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which
I'm super confused now. I thought there was just the one.
Right.
They did them all? They did The Hobbit and the 3?
No, I think Rankin and Bass did The Hobbit. Rankin and Bass did Return of the King. And then Ralph Bakshi did Lord of the Rings, which was really weird.
I'm sorry. So which one are you talking about?
The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, because I feel like I'm thinking of The Hobbit. I knew
probably.
That. I didn't know that they did the Lord of the Rings.
The Hobbit is the one. The Hobbit is the one that most people know. Like that's the one I watched.
Grade school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
but the movie is not, what you would call traditionally animated. Yeah. A lot of it was filmed, with actors in front of the camera.
Andy Serkis at 4 years old.
But these actors, it was like almost a full costume dress rehearsal with, simple backgrounds. And then after they shot the film, they kind of colored over it. They rotoscoped over it. It's a really weird, almost uncanny valley type thing, because these hobbits and characters move around with such smooth kind of precision. It kind of weirds you out, because they really overact their physical, their physical acting, their movements and stuff, and they paint over them. It's like I you know, when you tell a kid or a hobbit, it's like, or the actors like get excited, they really get excited and they paint over it, and it's like that's a little too much. But and in some cases it's barely drawn over at all. When they do things like the ring wraiths, or when you see the race of men for most of it, it's really just almost a filter.
Yeah,
it looks just like people, maybe a scratch filter over it, and it's you know, it's a real quick way to make a Lord of the Rings movie for sure. It's like if somebody was to say, how are we going to do this in a jiffy? Well, let's animate it, but barely animate it. You can see a lot of real faces in that movie. I really like it. I put it on pretty often. I put it on, take a nap, wake up, and it's still running. It's like, this is great.
Is that the sign of a good movie?
For me, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. If I put it on and I wake up and it's like, oh, this is on still? Great. And I'll continue watching it.
Like,
I've just seen it so many times I can take, and it's so long, I can nap at different points.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've watched it once over like 5 years or something.
Yeah, at least.
The more you described it, the more I'm like, yeah, I don't think I've seen it. It's The Hobbit that I've seen. Like, there's one of them that I saw all the time. It was another one of those like on VHS, and here it is. And my brother read The Hobbit when he was really young, so my parents were really like, this will be great. And so I wound up watching it, and it was one of those ones that was slightly disturbing to me as well. But so I think I have to check what you're talking about and see if I actually have seen it or not. You know, it all blurs together, right?
So the reason why I put it on my Wouldn't Fly today is exactly what you're talking about, the animation and
style.
So like when they put the the animated, when they put, especially the orcs, when they have the orcs, they're kind of blacked out, and the same with the ring wraiths. It is very creepy and really, like you said, the movement and like the way that they move and the way that they have the like the glowing eyes.
It's like a silhouetted face with some paper teeth and like Jawa glowing eyes.
Oh man, it is like I watched it for that when we recorded that episode, and I was disturbed just watching it as like a grown ass man, and like the animation is so like off-putting, and then it's I mean that's great because you want to be, when the wraiths come on and when the orcs come on, you want to have that creepy weird feeling because that's really the point of them. But yeah, it is weird.
And it's like I was trying to say before, it's a pretty good companion piece to the Peter Jackson movies because Peter Jackson was a huge fan of the film himself. That he took a lot of shots from that movie and replicated them for his own.
That's cool.
But it has all the key moments, has all the big key lines too, which I was like, I didn't remember how like bang on it was.
I do not like Lord of the Rings, but I'm letting the viewers know. I admire that he liked the animated to do that. That's pretty cool.
To the point where some things, like Ralph Bakshi read the book and then made his movie, but added things that to make the story make a little bit more sense that aren't in the book necessarily. Peter Jackson liked those so much and put them in his own movie. Yeah. So he's just taking from, he's taking liberties off of someone who took liberties off the original material.
The only thing he didn't put in was the end of the books. No. He did the first two, and I watched it again, and like obviously the Rankin and Bass went back and did Return of the King, but like, so if you're watching Lord of the Rings, like you get 2/3 of the way to Mordor, and it's like, okay, well that's that. And they like Ralph actually wasn't going to make the second one, right? It was like Rankin and Bass went and made the third one, but like if you're sitting there watching it in '78, like, well, that's that. They didn't make it. They didn't make it to Mordor.
2.5 hours. He was done making that. He was like, that's it for me.
Well, what did we learn today? There's only one return, and it ain't of a king. It's of a Jedi. AB, what's your number 2?
Yeah, let's move on.
My number 2 is my only kids film, kids animated film. This is easily not even close. My number 1 kids animated film. I came to this not as a kid because this movie came out when I was 22 years old. I was 22 years old when this movie came out. I don't even think I saw it then. I probably saw it a few years after that. This movie is from 1999. It is from a director that anyone who's familiar with Pixar and kids films are very familiar with, and that's Brad Bird.
Yeah.
And that is 1999's Iron Giant. When I saw the Iron Giant as a grown adult, I connected with it so much that I couldn't believe it. I thought, okay, I still enjoy kids animation. I still will but I connected with this so much that I like right away. I was like, this is it. Like, this is one of my favorite movies. And I didn't put, I forgot my background here. Shoot. When it got to me, I was like, that's not the right background. There we go. You can see him peeking out there. There he is. He's peeking out. He's kind of hiding. He's hiding. He's playing hide and seek. I love it's the time old tale of a kid who doesn't have a dad, who meets some like a father figure and attaches himself to it. In this case, it's a giant robot. And so the animation is top notch. The story is great. The characters are great. The voice work, it's so funny because at the time when I watched it, I didn't really pick it up. But the bad guy is Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore. And so rewatching it, like, semi recently, I was like, that voice sounds really familiar, and I looked him up and I'm like, Shooter. Like, of course it's Shooter McGavin. But it's funny. Harry Connick Jr. plays the guy who befriends the kid, and is it Hog? What am I blanking on it?
The kid's name?
Kid's name. It's my number one movie, and I'm blanking on it. Anyway, the kid. Harry Connick Jr. plays the guy in the scrapyard who befriends him. He's kind of a beatnik, and his mom is played by Jennifer Aniston. All of them are doing an incredible job, and I really like the idea. It's kind of I like semi recently came across this comparison online, and it never really clicked until that moment that this is the kids version of Terminator 2. Like, this and Terminator 2 would make a great double because it's the exact same movie, right? And
oh yeah, because
the kid befriends a robot. The robot learns what it is to be a human and what it is to care. You find, like, as you're watching all these episodes, you find a theme that I love: the ideas of robots, robots being human, robots.
You want to be raised. You want to be raised by robots.
Oh, where's my T800? My T800 is too far.
Hogarth is the boy's name.
Hogarth. There you go. Hogarth. And so you really, the ending is heartbreaking. You watch it, and it's basically, again, this exact same kind of idea of Terminator 2. The heartbreaking ending of that, it's kind of very similar. Spoilers, but you got this robot who was made for destruction, made to come to Earth and destroy humanity, and in a roundabout way gets reprogrammed by this kid, and learns what it is to have a human life, the value of a human life.
It's funny that you say that, because as soon as you said that, I realized "You Stay, I Go," and I now know why you cry is identical.
Yes,
you're right. It is.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm curious to watch it again. I want to do a double feature of, like, watching them back to back.
Twist my arm, why don't you?
Yeah.
I get down
like Terminator 2 and this together, like, to see, like, put it side by side comparison. Like, obviously you can, like, see the parallels, but, like, to, like, actually, like, watch them together, I think would be fun.
That's like when we watched Toy Story 4 and Child's Play back.
Child's Play, amazing.
That would have been really fun.
Yeah. So that's definitely my number 2. Like I said, it's ironic and also fun that it is my all-time favorite kids movie that I didn't see as a kid, that I saw as an adult. But yeah, it blows away any
what
Disney,
can you do?
Disney, like, the kids movies I've seen.
Nowadays, the animated films, especially even the kids ones, they're better, and so they come out and they're like one of my favorite. Well, it's not even a trilogy anymore, but one of my favorite series of films is an animated kids series, right? Like they're just so good, they're so well written. That is Brad Bird's best film. You can say whatever you want about Incredibles 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's not even close.
Like yeah.
It's the complete package of a film.
Yeah, nice choice.
Thanks.
All right, Scott, what do you got going?
So my number 2, another recent animated movie. I swear to God, I used to watch animated movies as a kid, but I'm going with 2017's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I know AV knows. Reason why I love that movie, first and foremost, we'll get to the gorgeous animations, but like I talked about in the last one, representation matters. And then when you see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and what they do is they give it a very fresh urban coat of paint. I eat that up. The soundtrack, you have Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, Juice WRLD, Post Malone, Vince Staples. Like, I'm hearing these and I'm looking at this movie and I'm going, this movie is so quintessentially important for a black youth or a colored youth or anything else who can see this. And like we talked about, Black Panther had just come out in this, but this is Spider-Man. This is a new rendition. This is the Miles Morales rendition of Spider-Man. And you see this and you're like, okay, there's Spider-Man going on right now and there's a ton of games and there's so many animated shows that have been rebooted and there's a million other different Spider-Mans, but you can see that they had the sensibility to put a brand new Spider-Man story that kind of incorporated all the familiar aspects that but then totally just spewed out all the new ones, because I didn't know much about Spider-Gwen, and you see this movie and you're like, okay, I kind of get it, because parallel universes open up just like comic books, and it's a fantastic watch. But like I said, the reason why I really gravitate to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, besides the animation, but the story at the main core, and it's the story of Miles Morales, and he's just a fun youth who doesn't really know what he wants to do, and his dad is a well-respected cop, and his uncle's kind of shady, but he likes that, and he doesn't really know where he fits in the world like most youths. He just likes, rap music, and he's got a Chance the Rapper on his wall, and I'm a big Chance fan. So you see that and you're just like, I'm feeling this movie, I'm getting it. Story of it, Spider-Man's come in, and it doesn't quite get 100% once like Spider-Ham and like Spider-Man Noir come in, but then you sit back and you laugh and you're like, oh, it is a kid's movie. And the fact that they do have the stones to do this makes me appreciate it. So then I just click right back out of it. And again, it's mainly at its core the father-son story, the uncle-nephew story as well too. And to this day, and I'm about to bring up my phone here, there is no scene that I have probably watched more from a film in the last 5 years than the Leap of Faith scene.
Yeah.
That scene, hook that scene to
on the big screen.
veins.
On the big screen, 3D.
This shot everything with him on the side of the house. Jake Johnson's narration of that about how will I know when I'm Spider-Man? It's a leap of faith, which kind of takes what you know, but with the what's up danger. Oh, and then at the end you see, because as all the Spider-Mans have been joining, their comics flashes down right in front, and you're like, oh, there are lots of Spider-Man. That makes sense. And then the Miles Morales comic slams down, and you're like, let's go. Third act start right now, and you're just hooked. And again, it's a visual cavalcade of some of the most incredible animation I've ever seen. It's got witty, self-referential dialogue, but again, for the urban coat of paint and how important the film was at the time and what it means going forward, I love me some Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
But talk about a good example of a film that if you didn't see it, how it came out in 3D, you missed something. Like it's still solid, but man, I think we all saw it together.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Did we see it in 3D?
Yeah,
we did.
We did. I 100% saw it in 3D.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whoa. And I don't care about Spider-Man at all, but this got me. This movie was good.
And to this day, like, you got to admire the movies that try and take the fresh look. Like Ang Lee's Hulk tried to make a comic book panels, and you're like, that's pretty cool.
Fantastic. It looks fantastic.
It looks great. This one too. They're like, we're gonna make a comic book, and they did. The thought bubbles, the way it's stenciled, it's incredibly done. I barely talked about the visuals because I wanted to talk more about the representation of it. I could spend an hour just on the visuals and the animation and the voice work. And like I said, there's one tidbit I'm going to get at this. Brian Tyree Henry, he voices the father, Jefferson Morales. And he's like 34 in real life. And he's like, he passed up the role as the dad. And he said, he's like, I'm not there because I can't voice the father of like an 18-year-old. I wouldn't know. I'm not a father and I wouldn't. And I remember I watched an interview with him where when he called them and he went out, and 2 hours later he's like, I take it back. It's the best script I ever read. I have to be involved. I'll do it. And it's just like, yeah, you want to be a part of that. And it comes out in his work. And the scene when he's talking to Miles through the door, and it's their animated characters, but you're so invested three-dimensionally in them. It's one of the deepest rosters of a film I've seen. So everyone top to bottom is incredible. They're all given incredible performances.
Now, I agree with everything you said, of course, and I'm not going to disagree with any of it. I just want to add on that when we saw the movie, or when I heard about the story of it, I was really excited to see it. I was really excited sitting there watching it because it reminded me of one of my favorite episodes of the Spider-Man animated series, just as the series was coming to a close, and all of these different Spider-Men from different parallel universes come to help our prime Peter Parker solve whatever,
Is he fine? He has to find Mary Jane.
He has to find Mary Jane.
Yeah.
And he goes through different parallel universes, and we get to meet all of these other Spider-Men, and they incorporate, I don't know if that may not be a direct reference, but certainly, an homage to that, which may be a comic book story to begin with. But that, I was just like, this is fantastic, because I loved that show so much. It's like, yes, more of this. So more stories I know already put on the big screen. It's just that simple.
It's so funny because when in the mid 90s, when I was a little kid, I collected comics from super early on up until about the 90s, and the Spider-Verse in the Spider-Man comics is what broke me. That made me stop collecting comic books, because it went from collecting, at the time there were two separate Spider-Man comics. There was that I was collecting, and Amazing Spider-Man, and the regular, it was just called Spider-Man, that Todd McFarlane had started. And so I was collecting those two and following those two, and then they dropped the Spider-Verse, which ballooned it out into like 6 or 7 different comics that you had to read, that were all connected and all over the place, all different characters. And then they had all the different Carnage characters and Venoms and all that stuff that was spread out. And I was like, no, this is too much. I'm out. So I stopped collecting comics because of the Spider-Verse, but I'm down. I'm more than down with Into the Spider-Verse, but it's just funny. Back thinking about it, I'm like, Spider-Verse is what broke me. I stopped collecting comic books because of the Spider-Verse.
There is. Well, okay, let's segue, because I'm in the same year as you, Scott, for my number 2. When you said 2017, I went, wait, what? We have the same? Not at all. But I will say this, your number 3 paved the way, I think, even though I know how animation works, it takes 4 years to make. I feel, though, it sort of set up the stage for mine, number 2, which is 2017's Coco. Yes. Because everything that was great about Moana is just as great about Coco, in taking the cultural heritage and embracing it and telling this story so much deeper than anyone really knew. About the traditions in Day of the Dead, and the gorgeous animation is what got me. And I said this earlier, I'm not a huge sort of Disney song guy, although, and this is a Pixar film, not a Disney film, but Pixar is not really known for their songs. But man, they got me. This soundtrack is unbelievable. And all the different renditions of Remember Me, when they come on, forget it. When they start singing Remember Me, tears are coming into the eyes. I can't compose myself, right? Especially near the end. This is also, to me, Coco is one of those first sort of twist. The ending kind of has a twist, and you're like, whoa, this is interesting. It's not where you thought it would go, or at least it got me. And I also very much love that Coco is not actually the main character. That's this great grandma. But this is just a prime example of Pixar's great directors. They have a few. You named one, Andrew, right? Brad Bird. Yep. This is Lee Unkrich. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name right. I can never get it, but he has some other gems as well. But this is one of them. And I just love that Pixar has sort of stuck by their directors. And if you look through their 22 odd films, you have the same names coming up. It's because they're good at what they do. And they also have a hand in the production and the writing and all those things. And this, for me, is just a solid film. And it fought for my number 1. but it didn't get there. So you'll have to wait. But this is my number, Coco. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm a huge music guy, and obviously the story revolving around music and this kid's just passion for music that he cannot
express. They won't let him do.
They won't let him. They won't let him go into music and to think about that. Like I thought when I was watching it, and they basically like forbade music in the household, and I was like, you might as well murder me. You might as well just kill me if you took away music from me. And so like that, they had me right off the bat. They had me hooked in on that movie because like obviously music is such a big passion for me that I was with this kid the whole journey. Like Miguel, he wants to make, all he wants to do is make music and be a part of music. And when he finds out that his heritage is all music going down that journey to meet his dead relatives and all that stuff, it was just
so well done when you think of the premise that he's going to travel to the land of the dead, and he's going to be with all these dead bodies. They just do it so gorgeously.
Such a heavy subject.
You wouldn't think it would fly, and it does, and it's very well done. And it kind of follows from My Little Prince in that I just love the challenges. Like in Little Prince, she was challenging conformity, and in this one, he's challenging sort of traditions. And the family tradition was no music, and there was a reason for that, which they find out later why. And then he's pushing back, right? That sort of I this is what I love to do, and I'm going to do it, right? And so it's beautiful. So there you go, number 2.
It's related to Moana in a certain way because there's one point in Moana where you see her grandmother's ghost and you realize, oh, she's passed away. Yes. In Coco, I think it does the same thing, but it's his dog. His dog shows up in the land of the dead, so you realize, oh, he's died as well. My number 2 also deals with death, and probably not. I guess you could call it in a darker way. My number 2 is the first movie I ever saw in theaters. It's The Land Before Time. Yes. 1988's The Land Before Time.
Nice.
And like Coco, for you, it's very hard to not make this number 1. So that's why I did it in chronological order. I was like, these movies are great, and this one has to be on the list. So I can't make them fight for number 1. I'll just settle it this way.
I'm happy you put it on the list.
Yeah.
I love this film. So, and again,
it could be one of those movies. It certainly is one of those movies, kids movies that wouldn't fly, like we talked about before. This is another one of those because it takes, it's half the movie is a happy adventure.
Yes.
But there are certain points, certainly in the beginning and middle and near the end, where one, you see Littlefoot is born and you meet his mother and his grandparents, and not too soon after, his mother dies. And unlike movies like Bambi, where Bambi's looking for his mother and doesn't find it, he finds his mom and she gets to share, a few last words with him. His grandparents have, kind of moved on. They didn't abandon him, but they had to move forward to get to the Green Valley. Yeah. So he's on a small quest with, his depressive state, and along the way makes friends with more dinosaurs his own age, and they go on a little happy adventure, trying to avoid a T-Rex that they call Sharptooth, which anytime he comes to attack is frightening as all hell. It is a very, scary kids movie for sure. They get away and then move on a little bit further and come across him again near the end, I'm pretty sure. And again, it's scary, but they manage to get away. They make it to the Green Valley. They're all kind of orphans first to a certain degree because all of their parents have moved on. But they get to the Green Valley, meet all their parents again. It's very happy ending. The movie was produced. It was directed by Don Bluth, who had worked for the Disney company as an animator and animation director and whatnot. I think the last movie he worked on was The Fox and the Hound before he's like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm getting out of here. He took like
sad movies.
It was a very sad movie. I'll never watch
For sure.
Loved Fox and the Hound.
Yeah. So he got up and left and took like half the animation staff with him to start his own studio. He did The Land Before Time and The Secret of Nymph, and that caught the eye of Steven Spielberg, who was like, I loved your work. I want to make a movie about dinosaurs that combines dinosaurs with Bambi, which is essentially what this movie was.
What it is, yeah.
It was the first movie I saw in theaters, like I said before, and certainly was a spark for a small fascination with dinosaurs, which will carry on for the rest of my life, of course.
Yeah.
My number 2, The Land Before Time.
Now that was executive produced by Spielberg and Lucas.
Spielberg and Lucas, exactly.
I was today years old when I found that out.
Yeah, I'm so happy you put it on, because this is one of these things where this is probably the movie I watched the most as a kid. It's just that for me, my top animateds aren't necessarily my favorite child. Like, we could do a whole separate childhood. I watched this movie over and over and over, and because it wasn't the spark of my dinosaur fascination, it was the height of it. I had my dinosaur pillowcases and bed sheets and the wooden 3D puzzles put together, and so this came out at just the right time to I ate it up and just watched it over and over. And like, who cares about the 20 sequels they did? This is the only one.
Notice I didn't mention those.
Yeah. I have never seen this. I only grew up knowing that there was a cavalcade of sequels, and I was like, oh, I don't care about any of them. And then when they were done, I was like, oh wow, those are done. And then Ice Age popped up, and I'm like, this is the same kind of movie. So
Not at all.
I have never, I don't know. I feel like I have never seen anyone. It's just like,
when Matt described the walk, sort of, how he meets his friends along the way and they have to find their parents. It's funny because I was picturing in my head it almost paralleling sort of the Lion King journey when he meets his friends and they walk, and I'm like, oh wow, that's sort of the same thing there. But
I have never seen this movie.
Oh my god, that should have been on your list.
I know.
Of movies.
I know.
What a pop! Yeah.
I mean,
I know. I've never seen.
And we're the
movie.
same age, and I've never seen it.
Okay.
Honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions, right? We've all gone through 3 and 2.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Honorable mentions. 2 movies that didn't make our list to talk in depth about, but we will mention because we love them so much.
Yep.
AB.
All right. If you want to share my screen there, my number 5 on animation is Transformers the movie from 1985, and my number 4 we've just talked about, which would be
Land Before Time. Oh no!
Oh yeah!
Oh, nice. I had to be on there. So those are my two honorable mentions. And it's so funny that you brought up that scene, because I knew that I had that picture from my honorable mention. I'm like, that's it. That's it.
He does it in Jordan ones too. Unbelievable. Yeah. That's my Spider-Man.
I haven't seen it since we saw it in theaters. I got to buy it.
Come over right now.
Oh man, yeah, I got to.
All right, what do you got?
My number just made it. It was my number 3 last time. It flips Hercules. I love Hercules. Zero to Hero, Can Go the Distance. Those are, for my money, 2 of the best on one film. And my number 5, Lion King, which is an all-time classic. Should be my number 1. It is an incredible story. I'll let the other cats talk about it later. So.
Okay. So my honorables, as I alluded to, we're going Pixar. So Inside Out was just edged out by Little Prince. Inside Out is a fantastic story. It's so deep. And then, of course, if it wasn't my number 1, it had to make the list. Toy Story from '95. Toy Story. Yeah. Those round mine out.
Well, to continue that thought, Toy Story also makes my honorable mentions. I mean, it could have easily been any other number. 3, 2.
Could it have been 3?
No, it could not have.
It could have been honorable mention or 1. But we talked about it a few episodes before, so I didn't want to bring it up too much this time. My other one is South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
What a good pick.
True kids film if I've ever seen one.
We're not talking about kids films
here.
No, I know.
So that brings us to our number ones.
Andrew.
All right. So my number one was going to be my number one right away. It's been my number one since I saw it. It's definitely my first year of college that I saw this. One of the very first anime movies that I ever watched, and what a way to start. We're going to take a little trip to Neo Tokyo, and we are going to talk about 1988's Akira, which is directed by Katsuhiro Otomo. Akira is a one of the very first anime movies that came out in 1988. It was incredibly groundbreaking. I think it was the second highest. The budget was the second highest that's ever been, and I think it got broke. At the time, it was the highest, and I'm trying to think what broke it.
For an animated film?
For an animated film, yes. And so they had like an insane amount of people working on this thing. The animation is so insanely gorgeous that it boggles your mind when you're watching it. It's so fluid. It was one of the very first times that they synced up the lips with the voice acting. So they had recorded all the voice acting beforehand, and so they animated around that. It was one of the very first times they did that, so that when you're watching it, the lips all look like their thing, and it's all fluid. It all looks gorgeous. It was I'd never seen anything like it. I had never seen really an adult animated movie before I'd seen this. I had seen regular kids films, and this just rocked me. It's so insane. It's so violent. It's like blood and guts and like swearing and like I mean I was an adult. I was probably 18 or 19, but like it was insane for me, and so I latched onto it right away. It's a very heavy film, very weird. The title character Akira is this mysterious child who has these abilities, and so one of the characters, Tetsuo, gains these telekinetic abilities and kind of loses it and destroys most of Neo Tokyo in the process of doing it. But the last, I'd say 15 minutes are like nothing you'll ever see in your entire life. It is so insane and so crazy that it's hard to describe. I won't even describe it because I can't, because it's just wild. But Akira will pretty much will always be my favorite animated film because of how great it is. I've watched it a million times, but I just watched it recently for this, and it still holds up. It still looks amazing, and for me, it still hasn't been paralleled to the scope of it, and just the influence that, like I've talked with Ghost in the Shell, the influence it's had. Akira has influenced pretty much most anime. Most movies, Japanese movies, like it is just groundbreaking.
And it doesn't stop there. Any beginning animator, any amateur animator who saw this movie is instantly inspired.
Yeah. And
it becomes their favorite movie. You can watch several different animated series, including like Ninja Turtles or Batman, and the one shot they really love to replicate is that motorcycle skidding shot. Out to the shot. You can find it on Google or YouTube. Just Google Akira motorcycle shot, and you'll see all of the other animated series and movies that lift it. Well, one thing about that movie that was really interesting is that they predicted, but not very well, the 2020 Tokyo Olympics.
Did they get pushed back?
Yeah, because they're not happening. They're getting pushed back to 2021.
There was a major event in the movie that basically stopped everything from happening.
Shut up! And it's in 2020.
Yeah, you see like a big Tokyo Dome type area, and there's a sign saying "Future Home of the 2020 Olympics."
In
Tokyo, which would have happened this year, except the Earth blew up.
which it kind of does in Akira 2. Spoiler alert! It kind of did in Akira.
It's unbelievable.
As well.
Oh
yeah.
Wow, I haven't seen that anywhere. That's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Wow.
Now,
one of the big things too about this I forgot to mention is the soundtrack. The soundtrack, they incorporate a whole bunch of different aspects to the music, and the music is just one of the things that really drives the film, especially for me. It has like really weird tribal beats and like electronic and like all kinds of different things that are mixed into it. And then again, like I said, at that point I'd never even heard music like that before. It was earth-shattering. It was definitely a life-changing experience for me when I saw this, not as a child but as a teen.
Do you recommend English dub or Japanese original with subtitles?
No. This is one of the few films that I will watch dub because the dub for me is pretty iconic, and is one of the few things that I've seen online too that I always feel bad watching stuff on dub because I am a subtitle guy, but there's this and Cowboy Bebop that the English dub is so good and so like ingrained in me that I can't watch the Japanese original. Like the voice work too, with Kaneda and the main character Kaneda and Tetsuo Kaneda. Like I tried to watch it in Japanese, and it like the voice is different, and like even the way he says Kaneda is so different that I can't do it. Do it. So good dub all the way for this one. Normally I'm a subs not dubs, but this case
that's
dubs.
A t-shirt.
Yeah.
Subs not dubs.
It is. It 100% is a t-shirt. Subs not dubs.
All right, Scott, what dubbed film is your number one?
No, so my number one, and it was the one that I knew was going to be. And last week we talked about kids' movies and my battle with existentialism and midlife crises as a child on a few of those movies. And that's one thing I got when I watched 1993's Nightmare Before Christmas. And Nightmare Before Christmas is easily my number one, and it's my number one for a totally outside of left field. And a lot of people like it. The animation's pretty fun. It's spooky. It's Christmas. It's that. Don't care about any of it. It's a story of obsession. It's a story of longing. It's a story of existentialism and where you fit in the universe. And it's a story of acceptance of your place. And you see Jack Skellington's story arc with, for my money, is one of the greatest all-time film story arcs. And you get him, and he sings this boisterous, "This is Halloween," and he's the king of Halloween Town. And you're like, awesome. He loves his life, but he's quietly depressed, and he's missing something, and you see that and you don't understand it. But obviously, as everybody gets older, you can kind of empathize with that. And again, it's a very fleshed out character and role that he has. And as the film goes on, he discovers Christmas Town, and it's magical, and it's bright, and it's new, and it's fresh, and he wants to bring that back, and he wants to share it with his people. But he doesn't quite understand it because it's not his, it's somebody else's. But that doesn't matter to him because by God, he's going to make it his. And as the story goes on, hijinks and this and Santa's and that, and ultimately as it gets through, he not only finds his love, who's going through her own struggles and strife and story, but Jack really discovers where he fits in his universe. And you look at songs like Jack's Obsession and Poor Jack and Jack's Lament are really three songs that stitch that story together and really what he's going for. And I remember seeing it as a kid and being like, this is a movie that you could write a thesis paper on about what it means to fit in society and in your world. And without a doubt, it's one that I always go back to, and it's one that, I do think it's one of the all-time greatest animated films, certainly of the 90s. And like I said, for, the animation, the story, the characters, and the songs from top to bottom, there is no weak song on that list. It is my number one favorite animated film.
I was reading a list on, I don't know what the list was about, but they mentioned Nightmare Before Christmas for one of the songs there. I don't know if the song's called "What's This." The one where he's going, "What's this?"
Yeah. "What's This" is fantastic.
Okay, yeah. So I was just laughing to myself when I read it because they make a mention of this. It's him singing about sort of going there first and seeing snow for the first time and stuff, right? And they were like, there's some continuity issues in it, in that this is the first time he's ever seen snow, and then a few bars later he starts singing about them throwing snowballs and things, and it's like, wait a minute, you've just first seen this. How do you know those are called snowballs? And,
Right.
but it's just a funny. I mean, I love the movie, but it was one of those things where I went, I've never thought about that before. Now you're gonna
they're busy building snowballs instead of throwing heads, and you're like, how do you know that? That's a very good point.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you know,
still a great song. And when we sort of met the guy, not met him, but at Comic-Con that voices Jack, and Oogie Boogie, right? We met both the guys. That was quite interesting to hear them talk about the experience, and then how who is it? Is it Danny Elfman that sings the songs?
Danny Elfman sings, yeah.
And he wrote all. I was going to bring that up. That props. You talked about the music. Danny Elfman is
probably
unbelievable.
My number 2 favorite composer. We've talked about that behind the great John Williams. I will listen to Danny Elfman's score, and it's just that gothic feel, and it's exactly what I want. And you guys are the horror guys, and what I like about Nightmare Before Christmas is it's got that very clean sheen horror gothic to it, where it's not like you guys like. It's not a true horror, but it's a very popcorn digestible horror. And for me and my taste at that age, that was good enough.
I think it's as horror as you can make a kids film.
Yeah, without
making it inappropriate. I think that I mean, you have your slimy monsters and your like scary looking wolf man and all that stuff. And like the Oogie Boogie parts are fairly frightening, I'd say, for kids and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it works because you're working in you're going with the scary of Halloween, but you're bringing in the happy of Christmas, and so there's this sort of melding of the two, right?
Well, and I like how in the story they bring it so that it's a joyful thing for the people from Halloween Town. It's not they don't do it for nefarious things. They do it for fun. Like it's all part of the fun. And so, like, I think that even helps kids get into like horror and horror things, because it's like this isn't something to be scared of. This is something to be fun. That's fun and to celebrate.
The one thing that I just love about it, you're right. They want to do it, but they don't understand, and you just see that in society. And again, you can tie it to cultures and appropriation, and they want acceptance in this, but it's not theirs ultimately. And again, there's so much to chew on in that film. And again, like I said, I just want to go back to one of the most powerful, which I actually think for my money is the poor Jaxie, when he's blown up, he's ruined everything, and he's sitting there and he's in the cemetery, and it's just his acceptance of who he is and where he is, and he gains the confidence to accept. And I've always thought of Nightmare Before Christmas kind of like really a man coping with like an affair, where he is married to Halloween, and he's bored, and he knows what it is, and it's the same thing all the time. And he has the affair with the sexy, fun, cool Christmas. And he's torn and he's divided, but he ultimately comes back to his love, which is Halloween. And he's a renewed, new person. So there's so much to take. There's so much nuance in that film that people don't give it credit. And I could write a 30-page paper on Nightmare Before Christmas.
Now, in the dark days before animated features had their own category at the Oscars, movies like that would have to find some way, would get nominated in other categories. And Nightmare Before Christmas was nominated for one Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and it lost to Jurassic Park. You know, how are you going to beat that?
You're going to lose.
Are you telling me that, like, if that category existed, there's no one could compete with it? It would an animated film. It would win Best Picture or Best Animated. Like, if it, like, I mean,
I watched it recently and looked into it, and I was like, yeah, if that award was offered up as far back as 1993, it probably would have won Best Animated Feature. I'd have to double check what else came out that year, but
of course, I mean, it might not, because as we know, the best doesn't always win.
Well, true, but I mean, but if you look at
get nominated.
No, but if you look at it and the time it came out and how different it was, it's definitely, that's an Oscar bait film if that category existed, because it's so revolutionary compared to other.
Oh, like Pulp Fiction. No.
Yeah, but that's different.
That's another whole category.
Well, that's different because that's like, and I agree with you, but that's Best Picture. But I'm talking if you're going against animated films, it's a little tighter.
I'm just throwing on my Oscar hate while I can.
But Academy Awards as a topic is kind of a segue to Mike's pick, I believe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, okay, let's be honest. Everybody knows what my number one is. So you might as well put the photo up because it is 2010's Toy Story 3. There is no way a Toy Story film is not making the top of my animated list, whether it was a top 5, 10, 100, whatever. I look at Toy Story, the 3 films. Now, the 4th one was great, but I look at the first 3 films as sort of the story of my life in a slightly different order. But Toy Story 3 affected me, and I'll explain that in a minute, but Toy Story 3 affected me so greatly because it was sort of the end of my childhood, just like it was the end of Andy's in this story. When Toy Story 1 came out, I was just starting high school, and the stories told there were sort of reminiscent of my childhood. I was just sort of leaving childhood and getting into adolescence, but I was still young, you know, and liked young things. And so Toy Story 1 fit perfectly and sort of, oh, that's me. That's how I play with my toys. I love this. And then, you know, flash forward to now you're 2 decades later, and here's the 3rd one, and it's talking about how Andy's growing up and Andy's leaving childhood and he's got to move on. And if this scene didn't break you, you have no heart. Did it break
you, Matt?
Still haven't seen it yet.
You have no heart. Well, you don't. You still have a heart. You still have a heart because
just no taste.
Yeah.
This scene is everything. Now, this film itself, right? If you go back, this film itself has one of the greatest animated villains in Lotso. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of new characters introduced that work, which was fantastic. I love the backstory of Lotso and how he was sort of discarded and it turned him, right? He was this sweet cuddly thing, and then it turned him and he became sort of evil, and I love that daycare story. But Andy passing off his toys onto a new character did 2 things for me. One, it just made me realize, this is me. I got to grow up. I got to move on. Although behind me, you wouldn't know I have. Those are collectibles. Those are collectibles. But the idea being that you change in life, and this is what I was talking about, the three movies. And if you look at those collectibles, Toy Story 1 was my youth. Toy Story 3 was me sort of leaving that youth behind and really moving on from out of adolescence and into the work world. And then, funnily enough, go back to Toy Story 2, and then I quickly realized I'm more like Al Wiggins or Mick Wiggins or whatever.
Yeah.
And I collect toys for value, and I like things that are rare, and so Toy Story really kind of in that way gets people of a certain generation, right? And the kind of like our generation, and they're just so well done. But the ending of this not only did that, it wrapped up everyone's childhood from that sort of time period. It also did the thing I didn't think any film could do. It just handed off these characters to a new star in Bonnie, and that was, we thought, the end of the story. But you could imagine she's going to love them for however long until she goes on, and then they go and make Toy Story 4, and it works. Yeah. So like anything with Toy Story so far, they can do no wrong in my eyes. But Toy Story 3 is the best of all of them, and again, directed by Lee Unkrich. So like he's my 1 and 2. He's my go-to guy. So if I hear that he's directing another Pixar movie, I'm buying a ticket to it for 5 nights in a row. But that's my number 1.
Yeah, you talk about that end scene, but also, the scene in the dump is
unbelievable.
Man, I remember sitting in the theater watching that thing and just bawling my eyes out,
holding their hands, and
you gotta admire, like I said, you gotta admire the people and the brass behind that to be able to be like, no, this is what we're gonna do because this is what's right for the story, and it's going to like tear you apart, but it's not sugar-coated. It's like acceptance of death, and it's this and it's that, and you sit there and you're ultimately, like I said, like we view movies differently. You admire the decision to even include that. Unbelievable.
Well, it's like a double ending. That in any other film is almost the ending of the film. They come out of that, yay, and that's it. but you go through the emotions of that. They're near death, and you're like, "This is it. This is how I'm going to lose my toys, right?" And then all of a sudden,
for a second they were dying though.
And then all of a sudden, boom, you get another ending, right? And yes, obviously they weren't murdering all those toys, but it's strong enough, right, with that soundtrack and the flames and everything else, and that you're like, holy crap, this is real, like, you know. So yeah, absolutely. Anyways, don't get me going. I could talk. Matt, what you got?
Yeah. My number one, it probably isn't a surprise. It's usually top 1 or 2 on my list. Definitely top 5. And as far as overall movies, it's top 20 at least. My number 1 is The Lion King. There it is for sure.
Hey.
It's from the opening scene. You know, the sun rises, you get the music hits, the animals are heading to Pride Rock to see for Mufasa to reveal his new son, the future king of the Pride Lands, and then slam, the title, Lion King.
Sick.
That was the teaser trailer, which must have been in front of some movie because I saw that in theaters and goosebumps instantly.
Yeah.
And it's the one scene in the remake with the photo real lions and stuff where I was just like, they did the exact same thing, slam, Lion King. I was like, all right, I'll stay to watch the rest of it because they did that right. I'll stay and watch the rest of it.
So if they didn't do that right, you were leaving.
Almost. And it's interesting because on the other hand, it's like, well, if they did something different, I would have been like, oh, good, they did something different.
Fair enough.
But, and if that opening scene had been it could have won an Oscar because there's that short animated award that they gave out for 100 years before the first feature length animated film could be nominated.
Are we talking animated shorts that won Academy Awards?
Not yet.
Oh, no.
Not yet.
We are not.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
So continuing the story of the movie, Simba and his father have a relationship. And there's one great song, I Just Can't Wait to Be King, where Simba is singing it, and he sings about all of these rules he's going to make up and dissolve and stuff. When I'm king, we're all going to have fun and everything. But what he doesn't realize, and what we find out later in the movie, is that to become king, the original king has to die.
There's immortality, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when Mufasa dies and Simba is blamed, he goes, he's something he can't take, and he goes running off. And we get that great couple of scenes where he meets Timon and Pumbaa. And then later, Nala comes back and says, "You're the king, you have to come back." He doesn't want that responsibility. And then Rafiki shows up, and it's my favorite. Aside from the opening scene, Rafiki and Simba talking about his future and his father is one of the greatest scenes in movie history. I don't know what to compare it to. It's not exactly Obi-Wan and Luke.
I was thinking that.
It's somewhere like that, but Rafiki is one of those, Yoda types or Splinter types, a teacher in the film that who gives terrific advice. You got to put the past behind you. He whacks him over the head. It's like, what, that hurts. Like, yes, the past can hurt. Oh, that is the greatest piece of advice I've ever heard in a movie. It really is. And then later,
because they don't include that.
I was just saying, it's the
remake.
only scene.
You're like, I'm like, they take Rafiki pretty much out of the film, and I'm like, this is garbage.
A little bit.
Except that it's in the past scene.
Right.
Oh.
He has that conversation with the ghost of his father, who, if anything James Earl Jones says into a microphone is absolute ear gold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
He goes back, he faces Scar, he's now the king, and he has his own son, and it's got a couple of direct-to-video sequels and that Lion's Roar TV show, which I've seen a couple episodes of, and it's not too bad. But it's definitely my number one. It's got, certain stories that, along with Coming to America and Black Panther and even the King's Speech, there's a similar story of the prince who has to become king. Kind of, I don't know why it of course, I don't find it relatable. I'm not ascending to any kind of a throne. It's just a story I like to see.
The Mack Flash Five. Could that be? I don't know.
He's not dead, people.
Oh,
you can see him in any other video on the channel. Francois is still alive.
They are previously recorded, but that's. I'll say about Lion King. It's enjoyable. I like it. I don't have a bad thing to say about it. But what I liked better than the film was I saw it not on Broadway, but when it came to Detroit, and I haven't seen a whole lot of plays. I've seen a handful of plays. I'm not a huge play guy, but it was amazing. It was so well done with the costuming and the songs and everything that I almost enjoyed it more than the film, but it made me like the film more as well. So just in connecting to both the film and the play there, for me the biggest thing for Lion, and we go again to what we were talking about earlier, is the music, and obviously picking Elton John and Tim Rice is like the dream team, other than Bernie, but
right,
Burnt Open with Elton John, but anyway, for this particular thing, unbelievable. And it's so funny because I talk about there's guys that I work with. I work with some like Mennonite guys who like don't know any like the pop culture stuff, and so something came up about Elton John, and one of the guys who's probably Matt's age, 35 or so, and he was like, he didn't know who that was, and I'm like, do your kids watch The Lion King? Oh yeah. All that music, Elton John. He's like, oh, okay, and I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, it's no Elton John through The Lion King because it's
cool.
So dang good. Like that soundtrack is unbelievably.
One thing that the photoreal movie left out that I enjoyed that they left out, because it's one of my favorite lines in the animated film, is when Simba asks Scar, it's like, Uncle Scar, when I'm king, what does that make you? And he says, a monkey's uncle. It's one of my favorite lines. It's a terrific joke, and they didn't use it in the photoreal movie. I was like, oh, thank God they kept that sacred. They kept that joke sacred.
Yeah, pure. Nice. Well, that's a solid top 5, gentlemen.
Cool.
And yeah, I guess that's a wrap. We've got our lists. We want to hear all of your lists as well. Make sure you write them in the comments. If you disagreed with us, let us know that. If you did agree with us, let us know that. If you like some but not others, type it all down in the comments. We want to read those lists for sure.
You know what would be good too in the comments? Sorry to interrupt. Maybe other topics you might want us to do.
Throw a topic up. Absolutely. We're definitely reading these things. Yeah. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Please do that. If there's nothing else, gentlemen,
we'll see you next time.
For AB, Scott, Mack Flash Jr., Mack Flash Mike Jr., I've been Matthew. I forgot. I should have set this up.
Deuces.
We'll see everybody next time.